Hey, friend. Welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. I am your host and fellow worthy warrior, Danielle Damrell. On this show, we are creating space for genuine connection by unifying women of all ages, backgrounds, and experiences. So grab your favorite drink and get ready to listen as we take a deep dive into our stories, making sure to honor and protect them in the process. We will also uncover the threads of creative processing that have already played a part in each of our lives. When we know how to utilize this as a skill, we can continue growing into the joy-filled, triumphant women we are created to be. You are created worthy. Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. Today, I am joined by another worthy warrior, Moyra Gorski. Moyra is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, wellness advocate, top leader in the direct selling industry, podcaster, and mom of 4 grown children. As a retired registered nurse, Moyra helps people live healthier lives with simple daily habits and also mentors the emerging entrepreneur on building their own online wellness businesses. She is passionate about showing others that change starts with simple steps. Moyra also shares a message of hope and health today through her podcast, Juggling the Chaos of Recovery. Both Moyra and her daughter have fought eating disorders, and while her daughter is still on her own recovery journey, Moyra is standing on the other side of victory. Her message is that you can overcome any challenges life throws your way with a smile and a little juggling. When she's not speaking, podcasting, or writing, or coaching, she loves practicing yoga, volunteering, cooking, and ballroom dancing. She resides in the Chicagoland area with her husband and one of her 4 children. Moyra, thank you so much for joining us today on the Created Worthy podcast. I can't wait to hear
Welcome.
more about your
Yeah,
real life
it's an honor.
story.
It's an honor to be here with you today. I really appreciate you letting me be here and
Of
so that we can
course.
have a chat.
Yes, no, I am really excited to hear. I've talked to you several times. We've been getting to know each other in some regards, but I actually don't know your real story at all. So I'm excited to sit down today and to talk about all of the things. But I would really
Mhm.
like to start with did you grow up in Chicago? Is Chicago like your home base?
It's not. I was born in Royal Oak, Michigan, which is outside of Detroit. All of the I have 3 other siblings, and we were all born in Royal Oak. And then when I was 5, we moved out east, and we lived in a suburb of Boston for 11 years. And then went between my sophomore and junior year in high school, a real wonderful time to uproot yourself. My parents uprooted us and moved us out to the Midwest, the town over from where I live now.
Okay.
And so I finished high school in Glen Ellen, went to school in Southwest Michigan, got a job in nursing um, right out of college, and that was in downtown Chicago, and moved to Chicago. And
Wow.
so the little roundabout way I
Yes.
got to the
It's so
Midwest.
interesting that you're from Michigan, though, because I think I've had 3 guests on this season who were all born in Michigan.
Oh,
Isn't
I
that
was happy about
crazy?
that.
I know. I'm
Yeah,
like, this season's just all about Michigan. Like,
yeah.
there's a lot of Michigan. How do you guys have a name for yourself? Michigans? Is that a thing?
Michiganders. I don't know. I don't
Michiganders?
know.
I don't know. I feel
Yeah.
like every state has their thing. Like here, we're Coloradans, even though
Mm,
I am not a native, but I claim that I'm a native by marriage and motherhood.
mm.
Close enough.
Yeah.
or
Well, and
or
our oldest son lives in Michigan. He married a girl from Michigan. And so um, it's funny, last year was interestingly enough, um, which may have nothing to do with anything that we talk about today, but my travels last year, I was excited to start traveling last year. And all my travels revolved around the letter M. Michigan being one of them, because my son got married in Michigan, and we had a shower there. We had a bachelorette weekend. But every place I went was M, except with the exception of North Carolina that we
yeah,
met at.
but
But it revolved around Melissa.
Melissa, I was just going to say that.
So I thought that that was really cool last year.
That
Yeah.
is really cool. So I would love for you to talk to me a little bit about where your passion for health and healing really began.
Sure. You know, like you said in my bio, I am a registered nurse. I have a bachelor's in nursing and started to work in rehab nursing, meaning worked with paraplegics, quadriplegics, strokes, and things like that. And what was interesting as I've reflected back, as I've gone, you know, as I'm almost 60 years old now, when I look back on rehab nursing, I loved it, but we helped people create this new normal. And, you know, after like an injury or, you know, whatever happened that caused them to have, you know, the stroke, or now they're a paraplegic or quadriplegic. So we help them um, create their new normal. And it usually was less than before, right? Because they were now in a wheelchair, had to walk with a cane or whatever the case was. And then fast forward, I was introduced to the idea of doing things more naturally when our oldest son, who I just mentioned, got married. When our oldest son was 4 or 5 years old, and he just was like sick all the time, and allergies, breathing issues, tired all the time. And the all the pediatrician would say is like, well, just give him Claritin all the time, like every day. I'm like, I don't know. That doesn't really make sense because he's not really sick every day, but that was their solution. And I believe there's no coincidences. And a friend of mine who you know as well, Pam, you know, we were friends from our health club. We had met there because we were working out, raising our kids, putting our kids in childcare and things like that. And she started to talk to me about the idea of doing things more naturally and maybe going to natural practitioners like a chiropractor and to help with allergies or whatever Paul was suffering from. And then his soccer coach told me about a homeopath that had helped him with his allergy years ago. And, you know, Pam mentioned supplements and changing cleaning products and things like that. And I was like, okay, I don't know. Like, this is 23 years ago. And like natural health and all kinds of really cool whole food and all that kind of stuff is much more accepted now. But back then it was kind of like, I don't know, like that sounds in my nursing sciencey head. I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't really make sense. But I was a young mom, exhausted, raising kids, had a sick kid. I was like, okay, I'm just going to try it. Like, what's the harm? It can't really
Right.
hurt. And so I started to learn about what I could do to make the changes to build health in my son, to help him get healthier. And it was intriguing for me. And because it worked, he started to get better. He told me one time at dinner that he thought the pills that he was taking now were helping him keep his eyes open during the day. I was like,
Wow.
yeah, like because he wasn't so tired. And so I just leaned in a little bit more. And of course, I got up on the table of the chiropractor's office because I'm like, well, I'm tired and I have some, you know, some of my regular women things that I needed to do, like mammogram and pap, were coming back that I needed to have them repeated. And he started to talk to me about how I was taking care of myself, what I was eating. Cheese and crackers, Diet Coke, you know, kind of like a lot of
The
times.
mom diet.
The mom diet, right? The
Yeah.
leftovers, the goldfish, that kind of thing. And he encouraged me to clean up my diet, get rid of that Diet Coke. I read a really great book called Skinny Bitch. Hopefully I can say that. But one of the
You're
chapters
welcome.
was on aspartame and how it got approved and why I was like, okay, I'm done with that. And so I started on this journey of learning about, like I said, that building health, paying attention to what we put in ourselves, on ourselves, around ourselves, who we surround ourselves with.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to see things change around me and including myself. And I'm like, wow, there is something to this. And then as I started to realize that I could help other people with it, having my own business and sharing these products, sharing what I was learning, it was really a cool thing because I could help other people. And back to that rehab nursing thing, like I started to see, because I kind of my tagline for a little while was feel better every day. And I started to realize that not only could I help myself, but I could help other people create a new normal, and it was better than what they were
Mm,
used to. And that again got me excited. And it still gets me excited today because I learned so much about, again, if we give our body what it needs, if we give ourselves what it needs in all kinds of things, body, mind, spirit, soul, like we can live great, abundant lives. And so that's my story.
I love that. So yeah, it was really spurred on from like trying to find a solution for your son and the
Mhm.
health issues that were presenting, but little did you know that that would then stem to something that would be a lifelong passion and way for you to serve, and teach other people how to love and care for themselves as well, which is
That's
really
right.
powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah, you're
I am curious a little bit. I know that your podcast is about recovery, kind of specifically from an eating disorder. What is your story behind your experience with having an eating disorder?
sure. Well, I had an eating disorder in college. I was raised again, as we talked about, Midwest, out east, back here in the Midwest. Um, great family life, but very conservative. Um, and My mother, again, my parents are great people. God rest my mother's soul. She's been gone almost 2 years. But we kind of did things, we just followed along, did things what we were told to do. And I found myself, as I went away to college, I found myself really struggling to be comfortable with the decisions that I was making and dealing with the stresses of what was going on in my life. Like, the academic stresses. I have two older sisters. One of them that's 2 years older than me was at the school I was at. And she's a brainiac, and as well as I am smart, but I have a different personality, and I'm not the brainiac. And I felt, I had the academic pressures and that comparison to my sister, just the things that we all experience if you go to college, the friends that want to drink and the boyfriend that wants to push things a little bit in the intimacy area, and all those things. And it started to be overwhelming to me. And I didn't feel like I had that relationship with my mother to give her a call and say, "Hey, mom, can you help me with this? Like, this is happening, and my friends and my boyfriend, and like, I'm having a hard time dealing with it. Like, let's talk through it or whatever. Can you
Mhm.
help me? Can you hear me?" Because she was very judgmental of if you did things outside of what her beliefs were. And so I found myself struggling alone in college. And for some reason, as we know in eating disorders, sometimes we don't know why it happens or why we choose that. But I chose to start restricting the food that I ate.
Yeah.
And that was the start of my eating disorder. And I've learned enough in my journey of hearing other people's stories and my daughter's journey that, sometimes I say, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. But it was a big deal to me then, because I was, as we know about addictions and eating disorders and those kind of things, they're just a symptom. They're what it's a coping mechanism to deal with what's going on with us. And I
Mhm.
was having a hard time adjusting to being away from home in the academics and just getting on with my life. And so
Yeah.
um friends are very important to us right along our lives. And so some of my friends noticed my weight loss and my lack of energy and my sad mood and things like that, and said, you ought to go talk to somebody at the counseling center. And because it was free, and it's
Mhm.
still free at that school. But I was like, I was in nursing. I'm like, I know what they're gonna, I take psych nursing. I'm like, I know what they're gonna ask me. Like, I don't need that. But I did. I went and I started to talk to some people, and they, helped me figure, just first of all, kind of figure out what was going on
Yeah.
and give me some tools to help me. And I graduated. I pulled my bootstraps up, and I did better, and I graduated from college and got that nursing degree and went on to live my life in Chicago. And, as I started to be more confident with my life and what I was doing, I moved away from those behaviors that um, I had learned about and done. So, um, again, I used to like really just kind of minimize it. Like it wasn't a big deal, but it was because,
Yeah.
everybody's disorder and things are different. And that was my experience. And as I tell my daughter, and I realize that it's not something that's just to snap your finger and it's over. It's
Mhm.
been a lifelong process of, you know, being confident with myself, being confident with my body, with the decisions that I make. I chose to partner with a wellness company that talks about, at times, some people talk about dieting and losing weight. And I have to tell you, over the 23 years that I've been aligned with them, I've had to get real clear about my messaging and what I want my messaging to be out there. Um, and when I do help clients, and when clients come to me and say, hey, this is what I want to do, I want to lose weight, or things like that, I've really gotten very clear, and I stay away from I'm so anti-diet, and so like, can we just love ourselves?
Yeah.
And as I tell other people in coaching, like, I am not at the end, I am not at the pinnacle of like, wow, I'm like got all this perfection. I'm just perhaps a little bit farther ahead because of everything that I've gone through in my life. And
Yeah.
I put my hand back to say, here, let me help you along. Maybe I'll share what I went through in the off chance that it might help you. Just feel like you're not alone, and that you can make it through another day with your
Yeah.
struggles that you have.
I think that that's actually just such an important thing to just sit and pause on for a second, because if you haven't had any experience with eating disorders, or friends or family members who have had them, which my guess is most people know somebody who has struggled with some kind of eating disorder, um, it is not one of those things that you just conquer and all of a sudden you've arrived, right? Like,
Mhm.
it is a lifelong battle. And that's been my experience as well. I went to treatment for an eating disorder when I was 15, and I'm 27 now. And I still, not every day, but often have to combat those desires to restrict eating, or to eat too much, or to purge, like all of the different things that I did. And for me, I think a lot of my eating disorder rooted from the fact I just wanted control over something, because so much of my life felt out of control. So if I
Mhm.
could control, um, how, for it started for me with not eating around anybody. I would not put a single bite of food in my mouth around anybody. And I was 11 years old at that time, or 10 years old at that time.
Mhm.
And then it just spiraled into multiple different things. But I did that because I wanted to control the way people saw me. And because I was a bigger kid, people saw me as fat. But I was like, if you never see me eat, then you can't see me as fat. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was just like all about control. And that's one thing that, as I've seen friends of mine struggle through their own eating disorders at different times, it's been like, yeah, just let me, I'm have not arrived by any means, and I relate to the struggle, but let me reach back and help remind you that the core of this is that you are loved, you are lovable, that you are beautiful as you are. That yes, a huge part of loving yourself and caring for yourself is by honoring the body that you have. You only have one body, and so we can only do our best to treat it well. But especially for those who have had a history with eating disorders, dieting is extremely triggering. And
Mhm.
it's so easy to be like, yeah, I'm just going to do this quick little diet. I'm just going to do this 30-day detox or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're full blown back into the mental part of the eating disorder. And then that starts to rule your life again. And that's why I love what you're doing. And I love that you're like, I am anti-diet, because the truth is we need you to be out
Mhm.
there doing that for people, mentoring people, loving people, helping people to understand true wellness, so that that is not um, the only way. Like, the only way
Mhm.
for people to achieve their wellness goals, to feel healthy in their bodies. And like, weight loss, I think, is almost a separate thing from an eating disorder in a lot of ways, but common. like cultural awareness of what an eating disorder is, it gets really tied in when really it has to be separate to heal.
Hmm. Hmm.
So so yeah, I just really love that your focus has been on let's like it's important. Well, health and wellness is important. There are things that we can do, but it's not about doing that quick fad diet to get to your ideal weight or
Right.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Because you can wake up and you've lost the weight and you're still unhappy because you didn't deal with those other emotions that, or the other things that you're avoiding or you're being triggered by or whatever. You haven't dealt with that. So what? You lost weight, but and you can go to that reunion. But like if you haven't dealt with your relationship with your husband or your mother or your whatever, it's not, it's not, it's not the cure all.
No. No. And yeah, you're exactly right. It's not the cure all. And it's a complicated thing to address. And it is one of those things that unless you've been through it, it's really hard to empathize with somebody else who's gone through it. And I think that there are a lot of coaches in the health and wellness industry right now, but I haven't met too many who have some kind of experience or are open at least about their experience with an eating disorder
Mm-hmm.
because it's scary, like especially when you're an adult and you're struggling with some behaviors. Like it's just hard to find someone who can be like, I believe in you and like this is conquerable, but it also is just one step at a time, one step
Mm-hmm.
at a time, and we celebrate those small steps.
Yeah. Well, and there's just, and there you just mentioned like adults and middle age. And I mean, there is so much disordered eating
Mm-hmm.
that's around here that really people don't, um, you know, really don't want to address. And again, I'm not here to put any judgment on there at all. It's just that as I started to, share more about my journey because our daughter started to struggle when she was in high school. And I started to share not so much her story, although a little bit, but I wanted to share my story of sitting on this side of the table and watching somebody that I loved struggle with something that I had struggled with, who I was hearing that there was a genetic component to it, and you throw that in and you think that, okay, well, great, that means I caused it.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is not true, but those are the things like I walked myself into a counselor's office, a therapist's office, who tended to, she's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, she goes, "I usually counsel the teenagers." I go, "I don't know. I'm feeling this pain that I've never felt before because my past seems to be repeating itself in front of my face, and I don't really know what to do with that." And so, um, you know, again, I started to share because I felt like, again, there just needs to be more awareness and more acceptance of it. And it's my daughter's story to share. She has shared on my podcast about a year ago, which was really incredible.
Wow.
But I just think there just needs to be more talk about it and more like holding space to just talk about this
Mm-hmm.
and, that body love, the body acceptance, and just
Yeah.
accepting ourselves, not so much just, again, specifically our body, but just accepting ourselves is what we're doing is
And
really
seeing yourself as more than a body, right?
right.
Like the body is what we can see, but it's who you are really has very little to do with your body. It
Right.
very much is what's going on in your heart and your mind and your soul.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. So, what advice would you give to someone who might be struggling with an eating disorder right now as an adult? Um, yeah.
Well, I think that um um I always say, what, don't be afraid to go get help. I mean, there are people, but people are very like, I don't know if I want to go to a therapist, um, but there's nothing wrong with going to a therapist. But there's also nothing wrong with like reaching out to somebody that you trust. Maybe it's you go to a church and there's a pastor, or a priest that you want to talk to, or somebody in your, just somebody that you feel like you can open up to and talk about. Um, but because we talked about this before we went live, like, or sit down and write down some of your thoughts. Like, think about it. Like, think about think about what's going on with you and start writing. I am a big journaler now. That's really helped me along my path of healing. And I think it's very powerful when we give ourselves a prompt to say, man, or like to think back, like, oh, I was out with such and such, and, or like, you know, and I wasn't feeling comfortable to eat or whatever it was. Like, just pick up a pen and just start to freehand write
Yeah.
about what's going on inside of you and stuff like that. And it's really amazing what you can discover as you just start to free write, and whatever you want to call it, automatic writing technique, whatever. I just say, open up a book and start writing, because for me, it's helped me discover things like really more deeply, like that's going on, really, what am I thinking about? And I think a lot of times it starts there. I did it starts with that, like, awareness piece. I learned that in some courses that I took, is just being aware and noticing what's going on. And
Yeah.
that's like the first step, because when we can notice, we can hold space for like that awareness, then we can say, okay, I think maybe this is what I need to do
There's
about
the
it.
next step is
Right.
revealed. Yeah. But the
Right.
first step really is acknowledging where you're at. And sometimes you can't just like do that. I call writing, and I did a little bit of research. Some credit to somebody else, not sure who, but writing is the gateway to the subconscious. And
Mhm.
that is so true. You sometimes, like, we feel so much resistance to actually sit down and do that action of writing, because we don't know what to say, or we feel like we don't have the words. But the truth is that you don't have to have perfectly um, clear words or thoughts to start writing. Sometimes you do just end up bullet pointing out random different things that come up. But that's why I love creative processing, is because you have to set that intention. You set that intention and then you go into writing. And so
Mhm.
it adds, for people like me, a little bit more structure to the writing process, or the creating of any kind process, so that it can have a bigger impact
Mhm.
immediately, right? Because sometimes we're in those like states of panic or anxiety, or we're just feeling flooded or overwhelmed, and everything is spiraling around, and we're not sure which way is up. So we need some kind of tangible action. And I love, like, writing, I feel, is one of the very, very best creative processing methods out there, just because innately it is just a powerful tool that we all have the ability to tap into. Um, but paired with intention. So for you, I asked in our pre-interview questions what your creative processing methods are. And you put listening to music and dancing. I'm going to add writing to that, because I also think that that is a huge one for you. Um, but I put together a little prompt for you specifically, that would be an example of how you would engage in creative processing, just like today or whatever. So the purpose of writing is to process overcoming your eating disorder. So your intention in that moment maybe would be to process the how you feel like you've overcome that eating disorder. Just like we're having this conversation, and I I talked in the beginning about your bio, and I sent you the pre-interview form, and you put in a few different bullet points about what you feel comfortable talking about. That's setting an intention so that we can have a really focused, incredible conversation that will hopefully help a lot of people to not feel alone, but also to feel equipped to take that next right step, whatever it is for them. For you, you could also say the purpose of going into this ballroom dance, this one specific dance, is to process motherhood, or whatever that intention is. And then when you get done with that dance, yes, of course, I'm sure I don't understand the logistics of ballroom dancing, so I don't know how much is going on in your mind of just like next step, next step, next step. But if you are in more of a state of flow during that, and you're able to kind of put an intention, pair an intention with what you're doing, then, like, I would assume that by the end of your, what is it called, session, your dance, your, like,
Uh, well,
performance.
it can be a performance, it can be a dance, can be a
Okay. So
lesson. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, at the end of that performance, you feel, one, proud of yourself, but you also feel like clear and you feel more able and equipped to take whatever that next one right step is. So that's why I've been so passionate about like, let's do creative processing. Let's talk about it. Let's put an intention with what we're already doing so that we can get even more clarity, and have that tangible action to pair with what we're, like I said, what we're already creating.
Yeah. And I'd love to, if I can a little bit, talk a little bit more about dance and what I've discovered
I
in
would
that.
love that.
Yeah. Because I walked into a dance studio just because it was the middle of the pandemic and I needed something fun to do. And I always felt that I could dance if I had a good lead. And when you go to these dance studios, I mean, you get the best leads. I mean, there are, there are people that are world champs that, that buy franchises and lead dance studios. And the gentleman that I partnered with now, I mean, he's been dancing for 20 years, but he's 26 years old too. So, but I found, and it's interesting that you brought this up because yesterday was a real, by the end of my lesson, I got really choked up because of because of what happened and because of what he's noticing about me. And I noticed, I mean, just to back up, I noticed as I started to dance, how it really is a metaphor for life for me. And my fears were coming up. My body image issues were coming up. When you stand in front, like come on, let's go here and stand here. You can't, I don't know if people can see me, but
Yeah.
but like you stand in front of the mirrors and you do these different moves and stuff and look at yourself. And so that like reared its head a little bit. It wasn't too ugly, but it did rear its head. But I learned that so much more about myself, that I'm somebody that I just get things done. For the most of my adult life, I have been getting things done and taking care of humans and children and like doing my business. I just go out there and get things done and I take control. And so I've given up some of that control, right? It wasn't so, with that eating disorder and stuff like that, but I'm just a go-getter. I'm a leader. I'm a but when you walk into a dance studio and you're a female, you have to let someone else lead. And as you let them lead, you have to surrender and you have to trust. And it has been a big life. It's like my therapy. That's why I started crying yesterday at the end. I'm like, this is why I'm here, because this is my therapy for life. Because as he said to me at the end, so we had this 45-minute lesson, and it was a day yesterday that I had a lot on my mind. And I told him that when I came in, I said, just want to let you know, I got a lot going on upstairs. So I need you to just pull me out of it. I just want to tell you that. And we're working towards a big, big goal this year. And so it was great. It was a great session. He's a wonderful partner. He led me out of that. He got me laughing, got me, doing some great stuff. And at the end, I said, come on, we were going to do that Viennese waltz just at least one time around this song that I just heard. I don't know, because that's why I hear this music and I was like, oh, we could dance to that, or and so he goes, oh, that's right, we were going to do that. So he put it on, which happens to be a song that somebody sent to me in the midst of some of my struggles. And I was like, oh, I think I can do the Viennese waltz to that, which is one of my favorite dances. And so we went around and danced to the song, and he stopped. And it was such a beautiful connection. And I stopped, and he said, okay, you know what? I forget you're like a long-term lady, or you're like a long something or other. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And he said, it's because you come in here and you're so tense. He goes, but you work hard and you do all this stuff. And then by the end, you start to relax. And that's what we felt together. He felt that. And so did I. And I was like, wow. I mean, it was a beautiful thing, but I said, that's why I'm here, because he said, you just keep working. And I said, I'm looking to kind of close that gap, that I'm not so, because he said, some people can come in here and they're like, oh, okay, relax, let's dance. And he said, you can't. But he said, I also know that feeling, even though he's just 26, he goes, you're a lot like me. And so we have this beautiful connection. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but it was so lovely as this way of processing. I'm finding that dance is helping me process through
Yeah.
me, my life and my fears. And like, I grew up playing classical piano, and so I love, that's why I'm like, I love the waltz and the foxtrot. I played Bach and Beethoven and Chopin. That's what I played when I was growing up and had to practice every day,
Yeah.
and so I connect with that, and I need to work on connecting more to that and just relaxing and again, and it was just this beautiful, I don't know, it was just a beautiful connection. It was a beautiful thing that happened yesterday that was like, yeah, that's why I'm here. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you win the medals and you do all that. I'm just here to just, and I don't know, there's so much I can say about that, but it's not what I expected. You talk about intentions. Like, my intention was, I just want to go have some fun.
Yeah. Well, your intention was you've got a lot going on up here and you need to unwind.
Yeah.
Which I think that is actually a really powerful example of just the act of showing up for yourself to slow down and connect with yourself and your dance partner, in your case, intentionally, which always leads to some kind of immediate effect psychologically, which is
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you just shared about.
Mm-hmm.
That's like exactly what I think we're called to do when we're in those moments of like panic and I'm stuck in my head and there's so many things spinning around. Like, we have to stop that cycle by taking some kind of intentional action. And for you, you've set yourself up to be able to go to a dance studio and learn how to do something that you've had this passion for probably your whole life. Even if it started with the music side of things and maybe you were forced to play piano, I don't know, but it sounds like you did love that. You love the
Mm-hmm.
music. My guess is that there was even as you were playing when you were younger, you were probably even stirring up some kind of desire to like move your body while you're playing, right? Which now later in life, you're able to actually just move your body and listen to the music. So it is like such a beautiful full circle example of
Yeah.
um, all of these ways that you connect with yourself. And now you're taking the time to slow down and do that intentionally, and it's benefiting you in a
Mhm.
powerful way so
Yeah.
that you can live your life well.
Yeah. And it is that getting out of your head and connecting with your heart. And as
Yeah.
I've again lived and grown, um, and raised children and done all those things, like I've lived in my head a lot.
Yeah.
And so that dancing, and I think also like what we did when one of your workshops, like it gets you out of there when you start to draw, or when you start to paint or write, it gets you out of your head and connects to that heart.
Yeah.
And so
It's a
it's
natural process of alignment. But for me, I needed something that was more, I love therapy, a huge advocate for therapy, but I needed something that was more than just like verbal therapy. I needed an action that I could do. And for me, it's an ever changing action. Sometimes it's painting or drawing. Sometimes it's writing. Sometimes it's dancing around the house like a wild person. Trust me, my dance is not graceful, but I do like to do it, especially with my daughters sometimes. But it takes doing that action, that tangible action, to get out of your head. And that's where I really realized the power of creative processing. I needed a term to 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 really be able to talk about it, and that's where I landed on creative processing. But really, it is exactly what you're saying, just taking that one intentional step to do something to get out of your head, back into your body, so that you can basically manually align yourself.
Mhm.
And showing up for yourself is more than half the battle. So when you do it, you know that you're in a growth cycle. And like
Mhm.
that in itself makes you feel proud of yourself. That's another way that you can love yourself a little bit better, because you're like, whoa, I did this thing that like maybe in the moment I didn't really want to do. I know that's how I feel with therapy, even is like sometimes I'm like, I love therapy, but there are days where I'm just like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to
Mhm.
do it. But then you do it and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. Or
Mhm.
like you come to a creative processing workshop. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I took one intentional step, or I went to dance class. Like you doing that, you taking that action shows that you are in a growth cycle, and then it gives you motivation to keep going in that direction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Could not agree with you more. Yeah.
I
It's
love
been
that.
it's been a lovely journey. And I don't go to therapy anymore, but I kind of justify in my head the money that I spend on, you know,
You know what? Dance
dance
in
is
this
like,
season, yeah.
yeah, it's what I would pay for a high level coach and a high level therapist. And I'm like, but I put it in the dance and I give it to those guys. And Norbert's my leader and my partner. And it's a beautiful thing.
Well, and I think that's really, I love that that's what you're doing, because in this season, that's what you need to do.
Right.
And I think it's really easy for people to be like, if you're not doing this one specific thing, if you're not investing in a coach, or you're not investing in XYZ, then you've given up. And it's like, no, new seasons call for new ways to connect and love yourself, or to process in general.
Well, yeah, and I realized that as I went through the pandemic and I was evaluating kind of like what I was doing and what was serving me. And I started ballroom dancing and I also started a podcast. And it was not related to my wellness business and any of that, but it's, you know, podcasting has taught me that my voice has value
Mm.
and that even more that everybody's voice has value and everybody's story has value. And even in the mess of someone's story, when we share that, when we're brave enough to share our story, we can provide that beacon of hope for others. And it was so lovely during those couple of years of things being shut down and my daughter being at the worst stage of her health. Those people that were led my way or that I reached out to interview for my podcast, I heard those stories of hope that I was like, wow, that I needed to hear. And so it's translated again. I think that that's what it's one of the things that I want people to hear is that sometimes, again, because I was raised like you just do it this way, you do it this way, like everybody else. And I'm an Enneagram 4, and I do not want to do things like everybody else, if you know anything about Enneagram. But I've learned that about myself later on. But like it's also hard to break out of that. And so I did a couple of things that were outside of the norm of what I would think would help with my business or with my life. And they both have helped me in ways that I've never imagined to be more confident to, again, now I know my story a little bit better because I've told people this and I've been on podcasts and I've interviewed people and I've talked about that. So I have gotten much clearer about my story and my life and things like that. I would have never imagined that by just, you know,
Yeah. By
doing
showing up
these
for
by
yourself.
showing
And
up. Yeah. And
yeah,
leading, following those little prompts that come in my head, like, oh, you should do this and you should go dance and oh, you should start a
but
podcast.
doing it, actually
Yeah.
doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Following those prompts. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we close up, I would love for you to show, we are doing YouTube podcasts now. So our listeners on all the audio platforms won't be able to see this, but go to YouTube and you can look. I would love for you to show us your journal that
Yeah.
you have created, because that's another thing that you were like, idea, execution.
Right. Yeah. Right. So again, journaling has been a big part of my life the last many years. And so I thought kind of as a companion piece, if you will, to my podcast, because this is my little lady for my logo for my podcast, Juggling Hearts. I created a journal called Journey to Joy because, part of that story of me and my journey is that there was a lot of joy there wasn't a whole lot of joy in my life when you're in the midst of struggle. And I realized that, again, that I could wait around for the joy to return, which I did for a long time, or I could go out and find the things that made my heart open up a little bit. So that's why I named it Journey to Joy, because I feel like, again, as we write things out, we can open up our heart and find our way to joy. And so I just share a little bit about me in the beginning and really my morning routine that has become a pretty strong morning routine, if you will, in my life of reading and journaling and meditation and all that. And I do have some QR codes over to my podcast where I talk about my morning routine. But there's just some blank pages. This journal has been filled. So some blank pages, but also some, some different quotes from people that I really enjoy that as a form of, again, a prompt for you. Again, some other QR codes that link into my podcast that talk about what I've learned about ballroom dance. And so I encourage people to just, click in there and listen to me or the episode as a way of just maybe giving yourself a little bit of prompt. So one of my friends wonderfully said it's like a nice starter journal, because there are beautiful, you probably know, there's lots of really cool journals out there with lots of pages and beautiful things and prompts. And I just wanted to have a simple journal, because as I talk to people, they're like, oh, I don't journal. And you can't really see all the details, but my penmanship's not particularly great. And so that was part of the reason why I decided I'm not going to journal for a while, because but I realized it doesn't matter. This writing is for me and for that processing. It doesn't matter if it's neat or perfect or all
Yeah.
that.
So I'm going to link that in the show notes so that they can
Thank you.
find it. And I will also be linking your podcast and all of your social media links. But I would love to close with just you telling us a little bit about what's coming up next for you in your life and business, or anything that you're looking forward to this year.
Well, I am looking forward. Well, I don't know if your listeners, if you do this, but I choose a word of the year. So this year I chose the word focus, because I was challenged to, in the dance world, I was challenged to really set some focus on what I wanted to do in regards to improving and doing some competitions and stuff like that. And I set some big goals for my business, and that focus just kept coming up as, like, if I focus on it, then that's what I'm doing. And then we keep those distractions out. And it's really resonated very, very much with me. And that's why I chose as my word of the year. So I'm really looking forward to how the year unfolds with helping more people in my business, and having more collaboration and more growth there in regards to, again, helping other people in the wellness space, in the entrepreneur space. And I'm really looking forward to improving in my smooth dance. I'm a smooth dancer, again, those waltz, tango, foxtrots. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And again, what that focus is going to lead to this year in regards to improvement. And I have become this lifelong learner. I've got some, I'm always excited to see what each year is going to, what I'm going to learn new, and the new people that I'm going to be connected with and things like that. So I've got some ideas for another book, but that's not in my wheelhouse for this year. So I'm not going to focus on that. But I am looking forward to that, the growth that happens as I choose to focus on really what is most important for me this year. And I'm just open. With my podcast, I started it and said, you know what, I think I'm just going to keep doing it until I don't have anybody else to talk to or anything else to say. And I look forward to you coming to be a guest to share your story. And just, again, I'm just open. I'm really open to what comes my way. As much as I try to focus and try to have some type of intention there, I've just learned to be open to what the universe sends my way.
I love that. And I'm so excited to come be a guest on your podcast in just a few weeks.
Yay.
I think that this is a really good spot to just share what you said your favorite quote is, which is that every day brings new choices. And so, as open as you are, I love that you're just taking every day, each day at a time, taking those choices, and then you're focusing on them. And that is just such a beautiful picture of where you're at in life right now, and the way that you are choosing to seek and find joy in this season. So I am just so grateful to have spent some time with you here today, and for your courage and vulnerability to share your story. Your ability to show up and love and mentor others exactly where they're at is beyond inspiring. So I just want to encourage you to keep smiling and juggling your way through life with confidence, grace, and determination. You, my friend, are created worthy. Thanks for tuning in to the Created Worthy podcast. If anything in today's show resonated with you, can you do me a huge favor and go leave a 5-star review? This helps more listeners find the show, and it also expands the impact, messages, and stories that are shared here. All the links and guest information are in the show notes. If you're on social media, I want to personally invite you to continue the conversations about these important topics that we're talking about. You can find Created Worthy on both Instagram and Facebook by just typing in Created Worthy Podcast. Can't wait to talk to you soon, friend. And don't forget, you are created worthy.